Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my recent reads that I read in January and February. I did not do a January wrap up because I literally only read 4 books in January. I don't know, I feel like I've been struggling with reading and I've been trying so hard to not be struggling with reading, but like in the past 2 months, I've read 12 books and that's how much I typically read in 1 month. And I think that's still amazing, still more than people read, even though Goodreads and Storygraph are on my ass because I'm behind on my goal for the year. But I will catch up. It's just so weird because I never am normally in a slump at this time of the year. So it's just very strange to be slumping at this time because this is just not typically the time. But I feel like I've literally been in a reading slump since like last July. It happened like midway through July and then I barely read for the second half of July, August and September. I ended up reading 10 books in October, but then barely anything November, December, January, and then I kind of brought it back in February. Considering it was the shortest month of the year and I read 8 books, I'm very proud of that. I'm really hoping to get out of the slump in March because I want to be reading. Like, I'm really excited to read. I just haven't been. But honestly, so far, it's a couple of days into the month and it's not looking so hot. But next week / later this week starts my spring break. It starts this weekend. So I'm hoping to read a lot over my spring break. But there's honestly just been a lot going on in my personal life and I feel like it's making me feel unstable. And when I feel unstable, I cannot function very well, including like doing things that I love to do, like reading and my hobbies. So it's really that. And it's like all things that are out of my control for the most part. Like I'm doing everything on my end and that makes it worse, you know? Anyways, we don't need to get into my life because we about to get into these books, okay? And honestly, the past 2 months have been really good reading wise. I haven't had a 5-star, but I had 2 4.5s and I haven't had anything below a 3 star. So I've been liking everything that I've been reading, but I haven't had anything that really wowed me. I did have a few. My 4.5 stars and some of my 4 stars I really loved, but they just weren't perfect. You know, they just didn't give me that 5-star feeling. I always go from lowest rated to highest rated, so I'm still going to be doing that, just combining the books that I read. But first, we need to talk about my statistics for the past 2 months. I use my own spreadsheet to calculate my statistics. I also do use Storygraph, but I like my statistics more because I feel like I just like it. Because sometimes with like the genres and the moods, I don't really love that. But in January, I read 4 books. 1 of those were by BIPOC authors. 1 of them had queer rep. None of them were rereads, DNFs, or for book club / buddy reads. I obviously did have a book club book in January, but I finished it up February 1st, so it counts for February. And I read 1,422 pages. Obviously, some of the books that I did finish up in February, I read pages for in January. So that's just of the books that I completed in January was 1,422 pages. I read 1 fantasy, 1 general fiction, 1 sci-fi, and 1 thriller. So literally not a single horror in sight, not a single romance in sight. If you guys don't know, my typical most read genres are horror first, then romance and thriller kind of battle. It depends on if you are counting thriller mystery, because if you count thriller and mystery together, yes, but I normally separate mystery out. So thriller and romance tend to battle, but literally I only had 1 thriller and then none of my other 2 most popular genres were read at all. And then for format, I had 1 ebook and 3 that were hybrid. All 4 of the books were for adult audiences. And for ratings, I had 1 3.5, 2 4, and 1 4.5 star. And then for type, all of them were novels except for 1 was a novella. And then 3 of those authors were new to me. And then 1 of them was a repeat author. And I guess I forgot to add it to my spreadsheet this year, but I normally count how many I own for that month. So I don't have it calculated, but I can just look. And so 3 of the 4 books that I read that month, I owned. Now for February, I read 8 books. Some of these I did start in January. 3 of them were by BIPOC authors. 0 had queer representation. None of them were rereads. None of them were DNFs. 4 of them were for book clubs / buddy reads, read-alongs, whatever. And of the books that I completed that month, they equaled 2,853 pages. For genres, I read 1 classic, 1 contemporary, 1 horror book, 1 mystery, 1 romance, 1 speculative, and 1 thriller. So I literally read 1 of everything. That's kind of crazy. I've just been reading all over the place, and a lot of the reading vlogs and projects that I've been working on, I've been wanting to work on more. I've just been reading so slow. Like there were so many plans that I had for the beginning of the year that I had to cancel because I've just been reading so incredibly slow. But I did do a couple reading vlogs, which I will talk about. But the reading vlog projects that I've been working on have all been vlogs where books were chosen for me, not by myself. So it's just been like I've been reading other books and I've been liking them for the most part, but it's just not like what I'm most excited to read at this moment. But that's also a good thing, you know? But for format, 2 of them were audiobooks, 2 of them were physical books, and then 4 of them were hybrid again. For audience, 6 of those were adult books, and I had 1 new adult and 1 YA. The 1 new adult is marketed as YA, but I marked it as new adult. And some of these genres are not exactly what other people would put them as, but it's just what I put them as. And I'll get to that when I get there, because I've been having some beef with the way that people are marketing some of these genres. But for rating wise, I had 1 3-star, 2 3.5 stars, 4 4-stars, so a lot of 4 stars, and then 1 4.5. All of them were novels. And then for author status, 2 were debut authors, 4 were new to me authors who are obviously not debut, and then 2 were repeat authors, or it wasn't their debut book. When I count a debut, I just mean like, is it their debut book? So they can come out with more book sets, but is this their debut book? That's what I count. And of the 8 books that I read in February, 6 of those I owned. So I've been reading a lot of owned books recently. Only 3 of the 12 books that I read in the past 2 months, I didn't own. So out of the 12 books that I read in the past 2 months, only 3 of those I did not physically own. The other 9 I did physically own. So I really like that ratio. That's about 75% of the books that I've been reading I physically own, which I feel like is perfect. Like, I like to read new releases, but I also buy new releases. I get them from Book of the Month and Aardvark. So I have ways to get new releases very inexpensive to me, especially because my used bookstore, they will accept books and I can use my credit on new books there as well. So I don't actually have to spend money, my real money, it's just like credit. So I have access to new releases very easily that I can get but there are also books that I want to read that I don't own that are new release or backlist. So I like kind of having some that I don't physically own, but not all of them. How these books kind of plan out content-wise is there's been 2 reading vlogs that I've been primarily working on. One of them already went out to y'all, which was my boyfriend picks my books vlog. So I'll mention those books when I get there, but I'm not going to go as in depth for those books because I have a whole reading vlog where I talk about them in depth. And then I have another reading vlog that will probably be out after this that I read 2 books for already, and I'm finishing that up this month in March, which is a new series coming to my channel called TBR Takedown, where basically I'm using my physical TBR jar to pick out books for me to read. Hopefully it's going to be fun, but also not too complicated, and also, having me read physical books off my TBR that I probably wouldn't get to as soon, or I just wouldn't have the chance to read otherwise, because literally, as I was saying, like, all of the 12 books that I read the past 2 months, except for 2 books, were either for like buddy reads for a readathon, which I only read 1 book besides the buddy read for the readathon, for reading vlogs, or for book club / other events. So there's been a lot happening. So I've just been keeping up with those things, but I haven't been able to read more than that and read additional. But that's really what I'm trying to do, because I love reading for reading projects and book clubs and all these different things, but I also like to mood read a little bit. And that's why in March, I'm kind of focusing on reading vlogs that are more mood reading based than ones that are really specific TBRs. I like to do a mixture of both, but it's been very heavy on like specific TBR type projects or book clubs, that kind of thing, the past few months, because that's all that I've been able to keep up with. That's all that I've been able to read. And I just haven't been able to read more than that because of my slump, but that is a-okay. So this first book that I'm actually going to tell y'all about was my 3-star from the past 2 months. And this one was actually for that boyfriend picks reading vlog. He did a pretty good job on the books, I will say, because they all were between a 3 to 4-star range. I really recommend checking out that vlog because of my boyfriend. I feel like he's really funny in it. I don't know. I really like that video. But the first book is The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. This one has been sitting on my TBR for a long time. I remember I bought it because everybody was talking about this book, but then we started boycotting St. Martin's Press, which I think happened probably like 2023, 2024, because I remember I was a junior in college when we were boycotting St. Martin's Press because of some shady shit, with some employees and them not responding to, what their employees are doing, yada, yada. It's been done. The boycott's been over. And the boycott actually wasn't on reading the books. The boycott was on talking about the books. And I've been doing wrap-ups for a long time. So I was like, if I read the book, I'm going to put in my wrap-up no matter what. So I don't want to not be able to mention it. So I just stopped reading all St. Martin's Press books. So I've been slowly catching up on them. And this is one that my boyfriend picked out for me. And I remember everybody loving this one when it came out. When did it even come out? Like quite a few years ago at this point. Oh, is it not going to say? Okay, girl, where's it at? Yeah, so this one came out in 2023, so 3 years ago almost at this point. But I'm happy that I finally got to this one because I don't think I've ever read from Rachel Hawkins before. I know she used to write like The Bells, like YA, and then now she writes thrillers. I'm sure if you guys are newer to BookTube and you weren't watching it back in the day, you'd even know that she used to write other work. And I think I do own one other of her books that is a thriller, and so I'll probably read that one, but if I don't love it, then I probably won't be picking up any more for work, because to me, they're just kind of fine. This one just mostly follows this couple named Camden and Jules, and they are like just living a very humble life, like just a regular life. Like he's an English teacher, I forget what she does. They're just like living normally, whatever. But Camden actually comes from a rich inheritance because he was actually adopted by the richest woman in North Carolina called Ruby Tavish. And Ruby died 10 years prior to this book starting, and we actually do get letters from her throughout this story. But Camden has kind of forsaken it all. He didn't want anything to do with the McTavishes. He didn't want anything to do with Ruby's inheritance. So even though he is the inheritor of it, she didn't have any other children. And he does kind of, keep up with the family and the maintenance of the home, but from a distance. So he doesn't really, interact with them at all. But then his uncle dies, and that pulls him back to this house. And his wife Jules has never been to this house, the McTavish house, nothing. It's almost like an estate. It's huge. And so now they're back at this house. They're dealing with family drama. But then also Ruby, we're getting inserts of her life in this book, and she had a very interesting life, and it's starting to connect to modern day, especially Jules is trying to figure these things out. Like Ruby actually disappeared as a kid, and there's stuff about that, and she was a widow multiple times over, and her husband kind of all died in suspicious circumstances. And so it's like, did she do it? What happened to them? It's kind of coincidental. What is up? This one was interesting. There was never a point that I was hating this book or dreading it or anything like that. I think it was a fine read. It just never really drew me in a lot. I will say I really, really liked the twist at the end. I think that they were done pretty clever, but the rest of the book is very slow. And that is my main problem with thrillers, is I like to be thrilled. I like to be on the edge of my seat. And this kind of like slower mystery with a little bit of thriller twist at the end is not going to do it for me, because I feel like a lot of thrillers today are giving more slower burn mystery vibe than they are giving actual thriller. And that is kind of a big complaint for me. Like I want like a no exit, a Karen Slaughter. I want us to be like investigating something, like finding clues, doing all this stuff. And it's not just like this kind of family inheritance drama. Like I don't really care about that. I know a lot of people do care about rich people drama, but that's not something that I care about intensely, or at least not in this way. Like I'm interested in it if it's done in particular circumstances, but this is just like not interesting to me. Like I'm like, okay, so a bunch of white people are doing mess. Like I'm just like, okay, like it's not even giving that tea. It's not even giving anything that crazy. Now the twist at the end, as I said, I did like. Now were they the most jaw-dropping, gagging twist I've ever read? Absolutely not. But they did surprise me, and I did like them. But that was really probably the only thing I liked about this book. I don't think the characters were done particularly well. They're all unlikable, which I have other thrillers on here that have unlikable characters, that all the characters are morally gray, but I like that characterization. And this, they just kind of felt flat and more as a vehicle for the story, which doesn't always bother me in thrillers. It depends. Again, I think if it's more like thrilling, then that's fine. But like when we're following the family, and the drama and the thrills are supposed to come from the family itself, and then the characterization is bad, it's just not going to, really do it for me. But I don't think that this was a bad book by any means. If you have it on your shelf, I would be like, okay, go ahead and read it, girl. Like it's not bad, just get it off your shelf. But if you want to haul it, I'm also not like, oh, you're missing out on anything spectacular. Like if you want to read it, read it. If you don't. Like it's just one of those fine books to me. Sorry if you guys love this thriller when it came out, because so many of my friends love this one, which is why I got it. But for me, it was just kind of like boring white people shit. Like literally a lot of thrillers to me are just boring white people shit, and they're truly not that gagging to me. And this one just wasn't. The only other thing I liked about this one, I forgot to say, is I really liked Ruby's perspective and her letters that we got throughout this. I think that was the most interesting, and I think Ruby is the best character in this story. All the other characters I feel like are very flat and unlikable, and not in like a, oh, you're so bad, I hate you type way. Like I love hating a character, but they're just like annoying and irritating and boring. That's really it. I was going to move on to my 3.5 stars, but I forgot that I changed one of my ratings when I was writing my review a couple days ago. And so I changed it from a 3.5 to a 3. So that kind of changes my stats a little bit. So the ones that I pop on the screen would have been correct. So I had 1 3-star in January instead of a 3.5. But this one is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And this is not one that I like went in thinking I was going to love. I kind of had no expectations. I knew that it was an award winner, and really I was actually wanting to read something because it was my winter solstice readathon, which I host for my YouTube memberships. If you want to join us, the join button is always down below, and we are about to be doing our spring round soon, I believe next month in April. So that's coming up here very soon. But basically we do kind of like a bingo board style readathon for these, and I call it like a punch card, and basically you're just either trying to get, bingo or black out the board, whichever you want to do. And I had one book that I was reading for another reading vlog, which I finished up. It was one of my 4.5, so I'll talk about it at the end of this video. But I was like, okay, I'll finish it up on like the first or second day. It almost took me the entire readathon week to complete that book. So I was like, okay, I need something short. I need something snappy to kind of knock off some of these prompts, because I could count that one for like 1 or 2 prompts, but that's it. So I was like, okay, I need something that's going to knock off some prompts, and that's short. And this one actually was the only winter book that I knew of that I hadn't read that fulfilled one of the prompts. The prompt was like under 200 pages, I think, and I didn't know of any other winter book under 200 pages. So this is the one that I was going to read for that one anyways, and I ended up marking off a couple other prompts. And this one was really short. It was just a little bit jarring for me. In this one, we're actually following a man named Bill in the weeks leading up to Christmas in a small Irish town in about like the 1980s. I want to say like 85. And so he is actually the coal merchant for this local village. And he, delivers coal. And one day he's delivering coal to this local convent. And he begins to kind of question the church and the morality of the church. I really did love the discussions and themes that we had in the story about, religion and convents and all this different stuff, especially like its views of women, because that was a huge part of this book, is how this convent treated women who they deemed to not be morally correct. And that was really what Bill was doing. And I think this was kind of showing that as well. If you take one small step, if you're the first person in your area or your community, your village to do something, that doesn't mean that it's bad. You're just making the first steps in change. And so I liked those themes, but this one was very jarring for me because this one is supposed to take place in the 80s, but to me, like the setting and the tone, it was not giving that. It was giving like 1800s, early 1900s type vibe to me. I don't know, maybe just because I honestly don't know much about Ireland in general, especially like Ireland in the 80s. But to me, when I was reading this, I was like, okay, so it's giving like there's cobble streets. Like, I guess maybe they still have cobble streets, but it's giving like there's no technology. I don't know. And like a coal merchant, I'm like, we really had coal merchants still in like the 80s. I'm like, okay, I guess like it just felt so disjointing to feel like the time period was one thing when it was actually set in another. And that was very jarring for me. And also, I don't love being in men's perspectives a lot of the time. I can be okay with it if done right, aka S.A. Cosby, my king behind me. You guys can't see him, but I know he's right here. But I can get on board with it sometimes, and I can really like a book, but I feel like it's always in spite of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a lot of work for me to really love a book if it has fully just male perspectives. At least I need like one woman in there, 2 women in there, or at least balance it out or something. But if it's like fully, the whole book is in one singular man's perspective, or even just multiple men, a lot of times I'm not gonna jive with it fully. I don't know. It's just something about it that I just don't love. I don't even know why. And it's not even like I'm like, oh, I hate men, so I hate reading from their perspective. I just don't know what it is, but I just am like, ugh. Like, y'all are annoying and gross. And like, this man was actually a decent man. I just was like, okay, like I'm following this white man, and he's like coming to terms with things that like, I'm like, really? Like, we should have been on board with this. We should have been on board. It's the 80s. It is not the time period that I thought it was. It's the 80s, and we're just now doing this. Like, I'm like, okay. All right, fine, whatever. Okay, cool. And that's really all that I have to say on this book. It really wasn't a bad book, and I think a lot of people could appreciate it because the themes are done very well. I just didn't connect with it for some reason. I just felt really disconnected. Moving on to my 3.5 stars now. The next one was actually read for winter solstice as well. I finished it in February after the readathon, but it was the buddy read for the readathon, so I was like, I gotta finish it. I was just slumping so bad, but it is The Shuddering by Anya Alborn. I read Brother from Anya Alborn before, which I really liked. I know a lot of people always like, that's one of their favorites of all time. It's not a favorite for me, but I do really like it, and I highly recommend that book. A lot more than this one, I would say, but this one was still like a good one. I think if you want a traditional slasher, but make it a creature feature, so it's like a slasher vibes, but with a creature instead of like a serial killer or, Michael Myers or whatever, it's with creatures. And I found that every single winter creature feature that I've read, like I think of Our Winter Monster or Near the Bone, and I'm sure there's others. Every single one of those I've given 3.5 stars. The same exact rating. I don't know what it is. And compared to those books, I feel like those ones have a lot more like depth to them, and this one didn't have that depth, but I did appreciate it for it being this fun kind of slasher where we're just following these characters. Again, they don't really stand out to me. I feel like they're more vehicles of the story, but they did have some interpersonal drama that was happening between them that I did enjoy. I did like a little bit of that tea. It wasn't too piping, but it was just a little bit enough to satisfy me. You know what I'm saying? It was just a little sip. But I didn't really enjoy the characters themselves. They were, again, all kind of annoying, unlikable, just not people that you're going to root for, especially in this type of situation. I feel like in these types of situations, I like to root for a character in a slasher. None of these characters I was rooting for, but also in slashers, a lot of times characters aren't that fully fleshed out, especially in like the actual movie genre. A lot of the times the characters we don't really know. They're just vehicles for the story. So I feel like this was just like, if you took a slasher movie with creatures, wintry, and made it into a book, that's literally what this book is. And it is fun. It does get a little bit gory, and the creatures, I think they're described a little bit differently, but in my head, I was picturing them as demogorgons or demodogs, specifically demodogs from Stranger Things, because I think the last episodes of the show just came out a few weeks before I was reading this book. And so it was in my head, and I just pictured them as these demodogs, and they was tearing people's asses up, okay? But honestly, it was kind of a small group, so I feel like we didn't even get that many kills. It was just an okay read again, but I did enjoy a little bit of like the slasher vibes. I did enjoy a little bit of the tea with the characters. It was a fun read, I will say, but I think it would have been fun if we had a little bit more bloodshed. My second 3.5 star I read for that boyfriend vlog. He picked this one for me, and that is Love from A to Z. In that vlog, I said my final rating for this was going to be a 4 star, but I lowered it to a 3.5 because I did really like this one a lot. But I think because it is for a young adult audience, I just didn't connect with it fully. Even though I could see this also kind of being new adult, like the characters are like 18, 19. So I could definitely see this also working for new adults, but I just didn't fully connect with it. And going into this one, because it says Love from A to Z, when you look on Goodreads, it's marked #1 as romance. So I was like, okay, this one is a romance. To me, this is more of a coming of age story. It does have a romance at the forefront, but I think it is definitely more of a coming of age story for me personally. This one follows 2 characters. I forget the name, Zainab and Adam, and they actually both have this, I forget the name, but it's like this book that was like oddities or marvels or something like that. Like it had a specific name, and they both like had these completely separate lives, did not know each other, but they both had an attachment to this book, and then they both made their own journals named after the book, and they are living completely separate lives. Zainab lives in America, and Adam, I believe, lives in Dubai. I think it takes place. Qatar. It takes place in Qatar, sorry. But he's like living in Qatar. She's living in America. He actually has been going to school, I believe, in America. But Zainab, she is going through her own thing because she is a Middle Eastern woman. I think she was born in America, but she's obviously descended from Middle Eastern Arab descent, and she is visibly Muslim because she wears her hijab. And a lot of people treat her very differently because she is Muslim, especially she has one teacher that she thinks is very much anti-Muslim, and he does a lot of things that are anti-Muslim and says a lot of things that are anti-Muslim. So she is very angry about that. Zainab is a very angry girl, rightfully so. She's very angry at the way that she's treated because of the way that she looks and the way that she presents herself and because of who she is. And it obviously is a decision, to be a Muslim, but obviously people should not be treated differently because of that, or their group shouldn't be unfairly targeted, obviously. And she feels like those things are happening. Like she's being targeted by her teacher, by other people. And it's always something, like every time she goes out, it's always some comment, always some remark, always some interaction that she has because she's Muslim that is making an aiding to this anger, which is justified. And she actually gets suspended from her school because she takes action against this anti-Muslim professor or teacher, and she gets suspended. And so she is actually going with her mom, but she's flying first by herself to Qatar to stay with her aunt during her suspension. And then this is where we kind of meet Adam. And Adam, he just kind of started college, but he has gotten a life-changing diagnosis, and that is of multiple sclerosis, which I'm still learning a lot about multiple sclerosis. I actually had a booktube friend who had multiple sclerosis. She has not posted, and I have not heard from her in a few years, but I loved hearing her talk about it, and I hope that she's doing okay. And she actually read this, and I read her review on it. He got this life-changing diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, which from what I know is a very life-changing disease. It can cause a lot of flare-ups, a lot of things, and it can impact everybody differently, from like their vision, their mobility, all these different things. And one day you'll be fine, and the next day you wake up and you're immobile, and it's very heartbreaking, and it can kill people. So his mom actually had multiple sclerosis as well and died because of that. But you can also live with multiple sclerosis. And from what I know, multiple sclerosis looks different for everybody. That's what my friend said in her review. So it was kind of, hard to be like, oh, this is good or bad representation because it's so different for everybody. But they end up meeting on a plane, and he sees her journal and is like, she knows the tea. She knows the tea. But they end up meeting on this plane. They don't really see each other again, but they're talking because, of course, Zainab has an interaction on this plane where people are like, I don't want to be sitting next to her. She's writing about me in her journal. because she's Muslim, she's going to take down the plane, she's a terrorist. Like, that's literally the type of stuff that they're implying. And so they end up moving around, shifting, and they talk for the plane ride. But then she and him land, they don't really see each other again, don't talk when they get off the plane. But his dad and her mom actually work at the same school. And so they are doing like different events and having, little get-togethers. And that's how Zanab and Adam meet again. So obviously they're going to have a romance, but I feel like this really focused on their individual journeys with, Zanab really trying to get through this anger that she feels so she can utilize it in a more appropriate way that's not going to get her suspended from school. Because while I don't think that what she did was unjustified, sometimes you have to work within the system because you don't want to get suspended from school entirely. You know what I'm saying? And so she's kind of working through that anger and trying to come to terms with how she can best use her voice to advocate for herself and for others. And she's doing that with mostly the support of her aunt, who I really, really liked. And Adam is going through the process of trying to figure out what to do about his diagnosis. He hasn't told his dad or his sister yet about his diagnosis, so trying to navigate that, especially because he knows his mom died from the same disease. And so obviously it's going to be really hard for them to cope with. And I feel like that's what the book mostly focused on, was their individual journeys and them coming together sometimes. And their romance was cute and everything, but I really liked their individual stories a lot more. I just didn't really connect to their romance as much, but I do think they balance each other out pretty well. I don't necessarily see fully their chemistry, but I think they do balance each other. And I like that a lot. I also appreciated the side characters and how they supported our main characters. But overall, I just didn't feel super connected to this story. Again, I think because it's YA, and I feel like, I don't know, the story and the maturity of the story was very good. And the themes, I liked that. But the writing, something about the writing, I just feel like it was so juvenile in comparison to the actual, meat of the story. Just because something is YA doesn't mean that the writing has to be so simple or juvenile. And I feel like in this book, it just was a little bit for me, and it kind of drew back the story for me personally because it was noticeable. I was like, I'm not jiving with the writing fully. But this one is really good. And I think if you have a young adult reader in your life, this one would be a great one to recommend to them, to add, like if you have a classroom, if you're a teacher or something, or to get it in your library, in your own classroom, or in the school, or just whatever. I think this one is a great one for young adults and can kind of teach them probably some perspective on things that they've never had experience before, like getting diagnosed with a chronic disease like multiple sclerosis at such a young age, or dealing with grief, or, being targeted and oppressed for something that you choose to do that harms nobody else. I had a lot of 4 stars, so we're going to start with the first one, which was the first book that I read of the year, and that is A Fate Called Fear by Karen Slaughter. This is the 3rd book in the Grant County series, which if you guys don't know, Karen Slaughter is one of my favorite thriller authors, one of my favorite authors of all time. I love Miss Karen Slaughter, and this one was no exception. I think it is my least favorite of the Grant County series. I don't know if it's my least favorite book from her. I've loved all of her books, so it's really between this one and probably The Good Daughter that are probably my 2 least favorites, but I did still really like this one. As I said, this is the 3rd book in a series, so it's kind of hard to talk about, but in the series, we are following mostly 2 characters, and they're actually a divorced couple, but one of them is like, she's a town pediatrician, but she's also the medical examiner because it's such a small town, and the other one is like the police chief, so he runs the police. And in all these different books, it's kind of like an episode of Criminal Minds, where each different book follows a different case that they are solving, but there are undercurrents of their personal lives running through this, and probably more than Criminal Minds. Like, we see a lot of their personal lives in these stories, and in this one, I believe her name is Lena. Lena. She was a police detective, and because of some of the trauma that she went through in the prior book to this, she is, in a different position in this book, and we are watching her explore this a lot. She is a very huge part of this book as well. She's not as big in like the first book, but she starts to, get more into the book, especially the last book and this book. She's very much in it. And we are following them as they are solving actually a murder on a college campus this time. And I think that's kind of why this book was a 4-star for me instead of a typical 4.5 or a 5-star from Karen Slaughter, because I'm so used to this story and Karen Slaughter writing like small town crime, corruption, murder, that kind of stuff. And I do love crime thrillers that take place in big cities as well. But this one kind of felt like a middle ground where they were like, oh, we're just like coming in from this other city to this college campus town. And it's not like New York City. Like, it's just like a little college campus town. And so it just felt weird that we weren't like in the main small town. I really like that element of her books because a lot of her books, or at least the ones that I've read, all have that element in it. And so for this one to take place kind of in this different location was a little bit strange. But I also did like how it kind of brought in some other discussions about even like drugs, and like there's so much that this book goes into, because Karen Slaughter's thrillers are very graphic. They're hard to read. They're early 2000s crime thrillers, which I eat up every single time. I read another one at the beginning of this month actually that I really also liked. I really think that early 2000s crime thrillers are for me. Okay, I really do. But the characters in this one, I feel so attached to them in this series. Like, I love Sarah, and she is such an amazing character, and I love seeing her and what she went through and what her family went through, what her sister went through in this book. If you read it, oh my God, absolutely heartbreaking what happened in this story. It was so sad. Like, I can't even believe it. It was just incredibly sad. And then also what Lena was going through in this was also very sad. She was very much struggling and just trying to do her best, and other people were trying to do what was best for her, but also were getting fed up with her, which I think both sides were very valid. But she was struggling, and seeing her go through that struggle was really hard as well. And Jeffrey, he's a police chief. He's always kind of in the story. I love him and Sarah together. I just love seeing like their scenes and their interactions. It's so interesting. And I forgot to say that in this one, these deaths are actually like suicides, but there's a pattern of them, so obviously they're starting to get suspicious of these suicides because it's looking very coincidental. This one was a really good addition to the series. I think it was nice to actually kind of break up, you know, the series with something a little bit more unique with the setting. But I want to get back to our small town. My next 4-star I actually read for that TBR Dar vlog, so I don't want to get into it too much because I want y'all to enjoy the vlog when it comes out within the next couple weeks. But that is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This one has been on my shelf for forever, and I literally own this one, Recursion and Upgrade, and I haven't read any of them. So I was like, okay, it's finally time. This one has been on my shelf for a long time, and I really enjoyed this one. This one is following this man named Jason, and he is, you know, just going about his life one day when he gets knocked out, okay, by somebody and taken, and he wakes up in a completely different environment. They're like recognizing him, but basically his life is completely different than what he thinks it is, and he's basically in an alternate universe. And turns out in this universe, he is actually a man that created this potential to go to other universes. So he's like basically body swapped, okay? And this one, it gets very crazy. Like, I did not expect where it went in the end at all. Like, it got so, I was like, what? Like, I was honestly mind blown, and I really loved where this one went in the end. But he has been someone who has kind of been like, did I do the best thing with my life? You know, like, he saw the potential because in this world, he doesn't have a wife or a child. And so he sees the potential of what he could have done because his wife got pregnant when they were really young, and then they decided to, you know, raise the kid and settle down. And so this is basically his alternate life if that didn't happen, or he decided not to go along with, you know, that, and she got the child aborted. But at first I think he does have a little bit of interest in it because he is like, oh, this could have been my other life. And we see him in the beginning of this book being like, did I kind of choose the right path? Like, do I love my life? And then the entire book, we are seeing him come to realize that he loved his life. Everything about his life, from the little things to the big things, are what made it his. And that's why he loved it so much. And he strives this entire book to just get back to his family and to his life. And his life doesn't go back to normal at the end, I will say that. But I think that it does have quite a nice ending. I really enjoyed this one. Again, I think I just couldn't fully resonate with it because something about the man's perspective, bro, it just throws me off. I don't know what it is. So like, again, sometimes it can work, but most of the time, if it's fully in a man's perspective, it's just not going to get a 5-star for me. And that was how this one was. I feel like I also read so many things like this because this book came out quite a while ago from what I know. Yeah, it came out in 2016. So I feel like in 2016, if I would have read this, it definitely could have been a 5-star. But like, I've seen every episode of Black Mirror at this point, and so I'm like, it takes a lot to really, you know, get a lot for me when it comes to like this technological, like future, weird, sci-fi, horror type vibe. It takes kind of a lot for me to be like absolutely gagged now, but I did really like it. At first I was like, okay, for like the first like half to 2/3 of the book, I was liking it, but it was just like pretty typical from what I know from like sci-fi, thriller, horror type vibe. But the last third of this really was excellent, and I liked where it went because I did not see it coming at all, and it was really good. And I really like the themes in here about your life, and like, again, every small little thing, your daily life, every small little thing in your daily life is what makes your life yours. And if any of those things change, again, it's kind of like a butterfly effect. We really see that in the story and how things change. And we're also talking about multiple realities and a lot of different like dark matter and what dark matter is, and like all these different scientific terms, which I also love. If you guys know me, I love anything sci-fi in my books. I'm more of like a sci-fi in something else, like a sci-fi thriller or sci-fi horror, that kind of thing, than I am just a pure sci-fi reader. But I do like sci-fi like this when it's actually like has science in it and not just like we're living on a planet. Like I like it when science is in the books. I love that. Like that's why I love Into the Drowning Deep so much, or one of the reasons why, because I just love that element. I think it's because like, even though I guess psychology is very much a scientific humanity or social science, like a lot of people don't think that psychology is that scientific, but it is a science, and we do research, we do all of that. But this is like the other type of science, and I love science. Like I loved animals and marine biology, AP biology. One of the hardest classes I took all of high school. Like my high school, how we had it split was like we did classes 4 for one semester, 4 for the other. My high schools were like that. And AP biology was one of the only classes that we had to take both semesters, like year long. And one of the hardest classes I've ever taken, but one of the best classes I've ever taken. I took the only forensic class that my high school offered. I took a forensics class that my college offered. Like I love forensics, biology, all the different types of stuff. So this is a little bit more like physics, which is not the most interesting to me, but I still like, I love Black Mirror. I love that type of thing. So this one I did really enjoy. Kind of coincidental, the next one also has dark in the name, but that is Immortal Dark, a pretty different book, I would say. This one was actually my first book club pick for my new membership book club called the After Hours Book Club. This was our first pick, and I really enjoyed this one. I just had a couple little issues that just drew it back for me, but I really did love this one. We are following Kadan, who is actually an heiress to this house, which is in this arcane kind of society where vampires have been put these restrictions on them years ago, where they can only feed off of, there's 3 different ones, but one of them is that they can only feed off of these certain families. So they are kind of bound and sired to these families, and this way they can't just like go off and start like drinking and feeding on any human that they want. They're very much within the society, and this society kind of operates, from what I know, in this university. That was one of the things that I did have an issue with, is that some of the world building I feel like was like had some holes in it, and it wasn't like intentional like little mysteries for us to figure out in later books, because I think this is supposed to be a trilogy. Only the second book is out so far, but it felt like actual like, you know, missing gaps in the world building of this story that I feel like if those things were clarified, I really would have appreciated that. Like I know that there was more founding families than the ones that are just in this university. Let me see if I can actually pull up the picture. But like, here is the university. I know it's a lot, but the different houses are in here. But when they did this initial siring, it was to more families in this. And so I'm kind of confused on how that works. But that is one of my only complaints of this story, because I really like this. As I said, we're following Kadan, and she's this heiress, but she was orphaned, and her aunt and her family kind of just got her out of the society, her and her twin sister June. They never were raised in the society, and they've actually been mostly like in foster care. So Kadan has been with a foster mother, but June was actually taken a few months or maybe even a year prior to this book starting by somebody random. Like she was just in a car, and her sister saw her, and she's been searching for her ever since. And she does something really horrific at the beginning of this book to try and get some answers, and that lands her in prison. And actually the headmaster of the school comes to bail Kadan out, which she's very excited about, because she is convinced that the person that took her is this vampire named Susenyos, who is tied to her family. And he is at the school, obviously, and she's been trying to find it. But turns out that if you're like not invited to basically go there, you can't really find it. And they actually need her help, because she also comes to tell her that her aunt has died. And her aunt was like basically holding down the house for their family. And now with the way that the laws are, basically if Susenyos is in that house unoccupied for like 28 days or like a month or whatever, 4 weeks, then he gets possession of the house and basically like the family. So they're like, Kadan, you need to come and enroll in our university, and then you'll be in the house, and then it'll basically like pause it. So the whole time that she's in the house, he cannot add to those 28 days. And then when she leaves, the 28 days will restart. And if she's not there for 28 days, then, you know, he gets possession of the house. And obviously they don't want that. They don't want a vampire controlling one of these houses. And so she decides to go to this university, which basically trains humans and vampires to coexist and live together, and these families, yada, yada. and another murder happens on campus, which I don't want to get into because that actually shocked me. Like, it was a big jarring moment for me, but another murder happens on campus, and it does talk about that in the synopsis. And Kadon begins to sink kind of further into this world, and she does go and meet Susenyos, and she does hate him. And I said this one is a true enemies to lovers. Now, some people, even my own friends, they're like, if they even have any sort of like, just anything but disdain for each other in the first book, it's not an enemies to lovers. To me, this one was a really good enemies to lovers to me, because they don't even really like each other still at the end of this book. So I feel like it definitely is giving enemies to lovers to me. But this world was so fascinating. I really liked it, and I love how it brought in like dark academia, vampires, blackness, all of it. Like, every person at this school is from, I think, mostly East African descent, but just like African descent. And I love to seeing how diverse the whole cast was. They are all black, but obviously they have different cultures, different dialects, and I loved how that was explored in this. It was really amazing. It was such a good book. I loved Kadon so much as a character. I know a lot of other people didn't like her, thought that she was very rash, but I'm like, okay, if you were literally an orphan and one of the only people in your family was literally taken, your best friend, your sister, your twin sister was taken, you're searching for her, you think it's tied to this arcane society that you were born into, but you have no idea about. And now you're thrust into this. You're in this house alone with this person that you think has literally taken your sister, that has harmed your family, and you're just expected to act normal. Because I wouldn't, especially she's like 18, 19 years old. Her brain is not even fully developed, okay? Her prefrontal cortex is not even fully developed. Mine isn't even fully developed. So I'm like, I can't imagine what this girl's feeling and what she's going through. Like, she is honestly so traumatized and put in such a compromising, sensitive position. And so, of course, she's going to act that way. And I loved how rash she was, because I feel like we don't get to see black girls be like this. We don't get to see black girls be this messy a lot of the time. So I loved being able to actually see that and get that representation, because we don't just need like black girls who are the best characters, who are so lovely. We need black characters across the board. We need ones that are morally gray. We need ones that are messy. We need ones that are amazing. We need all of them. And so I really liked Kadon. Susenyos I also liked, but I feel like I only really know him through Kadon. Like, I know kind of just like what she knows about him. So I feel like I don't know him fully fleshed out as a character yet. So I'm hoping we get more of him in the second book. And I also did like the side characters as well. I really, really liked them. But again, I wish that we just had a little bit more of them. But I also did really enjoy their stories, especially because some of them were major components of this, like the plot. And it was just so interesting, so fascinating. But June, the missing sister, I will say that she pissed me off in this book. She pissed me off royally. And I hope Kadon find her and put her hands on her in the next book, okay? I really hope that she whoop her ass, because the things that we find out about this girl in this book piss me right the fuck off. But I really love this one. Like, I just loved the world building. I just wish we had a little bit more clarity. I loved the vibe. I loved the characters. But I was going to say this one is marketed as YA. And I think this is much darker. Like, when you compare this to like the Dark Academia YA book that everybody knows, Legendborn, I think this one is much darker. It's not as dark as like Ninth House, which is an adult Dark Academia, but it definitely is darker than I expected. And so I feel like this one for me, especially like with the writing, with the characters, with all that, I think this one's more of a new adult book, which is what I marked it as on my statistics. Because people were even complaining about this. I don't even think this one has that crazy of spice or anything, really. But people were complaining about this has spice and it's YA, yada, yada. I don't even think the spice is anything crazy. Because, I mean, I was 13, 14, 15, reading Wattpad. So, you know, I don't think this is anything crazy. Teenagers already probably know a lot. I don't think that reading this book is going to corrupt them and they're just going to go out and procreate. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think even for that, it could just be new adult. I think this is a new adult book. They're at a university. Like, I don't understand why this is not marked as new adult, but you know, I think this is probably better for like 16 plus, or even just like in that, you know, really like early college stage, like 17, 18, 19, 20. I think this is ideal for this book. But also, I think this is good for everybody who's over the age of like 16. If you have not picked this book up, you need to. It is so good. Such a good black fantasy. Next up is the last book I read for that boyfriend vlog, and that is The Bog Wife by Kate Cronister. This one, again, I have a little bit of beef because this one is marked as horror, and I see kind of why. It does have like a little bit of body horror, I guess, in it, but to me, this is a speculative book. This is a weird speculative book, and I'm not a horror snob or anything. I'm not like, oh, that is not horror. I know a lot of people, I feel like, will say like a lot of things are not horror when they are horror, especially when it comes to race. But I'm not like that, obviously. I think a lot of different things can be horror, but I think this one is just more speculative than anything. In this one, we're actually following a group of siblings, and they were raised in a very isolated environment on this cranberry bog. And they literally, some of them have never ever even left outside of this cranberry bog area, like never left this little isolated land. And they have this ritual that they have been taught when the heir dies, who is like the patriarch. Basically, this is a very patriarchal family. When the patriarch dies, they basically sacrifice his body to the bog, and out is supposed to come a bog wife. And then the new heir, or like the oldest son, is supposed to procreate with this bog wife to make bog children. And they believe that's how they were all created as well. Like their bog wife mother, who they don't really speak about. They have some trauma around that woman and what happened to her, but that is basically what we're following. And their father has now passed away. So all of this siblings are called together because one of them did actually like escape. She ran away. So they call her back for this ritual. He passes away, but the bog produces no bog wife. And so they're in this dire circumstance to them where they're like, our whole lineage is going to collapse. Like, we have to fix this. The bog is not pleased with us. But now the person that's been leading them this whole time, their father, is dead. Their mother is not around. And so they don't really know what to do. And throughout most of this book, I was questioning, like, is this real? Is it fake? Is it gaslighting? Is it real magic? And I was right to question that. And it's kind of yes and no to all of the above, which I really, really like. I really like how this was done. I also really enjoyed the characters because it's so interesting to see these people who had like the same genetics, were raised in the same isolated environment, and how they all react to the situation, to their trauma, to where they're even raised, how they were raised. They react to it all so differently, and I really enjoyed that. And this has kind of a cast that's not too big, but it's about the siblings, which I think there's 5 of them, and I was able to keep them all straight, which sometimes I do struggle with. And so I really did enjoy the characters. This is kind of a plotless, meandering book. There's not much plot to it, but the atmosphere was just incredible. This had such a good southern kind of gothic atmosphere, like in this wet, drenching bog. Like it just, I felt so immersed in that atmosphere. It was so well done. Like compared to like The Heiress, which I think is also supposed to be southern gothic, it did not give me any of that atmosphere at all. This brought that southern gothic atmosphere, and what they talked about with like the bog and nature and these rituals, it was so crazy, and it was almost cult-like in its nature, and it was just so interesting to me. I really did enjoy this one, and it was my favorite of that vlog. I also read a classic this month, if you guys saw my stats, and that was Wuthering Heights. I have not read a classic in a minute, and I was scared to go into this one, but I did read it physically, and I annotated the heck out of this book. I actually did vlog this, which the vlog will be going up for my YouTube members, and I also saw the movie. And so I talk about the book, the movie, and comparing them, and that's why I really wanted to read this book, because I never was like particularly interested in Wuthering Heights before. I didn't really know much about it. Obviously, I heard of it in the Bronte sisters. My friend Beth from Beth Morvant, she actually read this last year and she really liked it. So I was like, okay, noted. She loved this book. She gave it 5 stars. So I was like, maybe I'll love it too. But I didn't, really pay much attention to it. But then I saw this movie was coming out. I said, Margot Robbie, Jacob Elordi, sign me the fuck up. But then I heard about that the character Heathcliff that Jacob Elordi is playing is a man of color, and Jacob Elordi is white. So I was like, oh shit, I gotta read the text before I see this movie. Because imagine if I go to see the movie and I like the movie a lot and I'm raving about the movie, but then I feel like stupid because there's so much historical context from the text and so much other context from the text that I just don't have in my brain. And so then I'm praising this movie, but like it's actually not a good adaptation. That was kind of my fear, and that is kind of how it turned out. I really did enjoy the movie. I give it a 4 out of 5, but I would give it like a 1.5, a 2 as an adaptation, like maybe a 2, because it does have some stuff, but a lot of stuff it also doesn't have. Like this book is actually split into 2 different acts. So there's a big event that happens in the middle act, and it splits into generations. And the second half of this is really actually exploring generations. So if you don't know what this one is about, it's following this man named Heathcliff and this girl named Kathy. And Heathcliff was like just on the street, a poor boy, a boy of color. They literally describe him as black, and they also use a different word for it that is a slur, but they do use that in this book. And they are, really talking bad about him. But one day, Kathy's dad sees him, picks him up, brings him home to his wife and 2 other kids, right? And then eventually he dies, and he is treated horribly by these people. They treat him like absolute trash. But he loves Kathy. Him and Kathy grew up together. They're best friends. But Kathy is a little annoying, whiny ass brat. Okay. She's an annoying little brat. But they have this very complex, kind of toxic, romantic relationship. And that is the core of this story. But also, this is a generational story. It is not a romance story. It is very, like, it's not a happily ever and after ending. Like, it's not that, which is required to be a romance. But it is a generational story showing how toxicity and obsession can affect generations. And I loved seeing that because that is really what happens in the second half of the story. But the movie completely nicks that. Like, the second act of this is not in the movie at all. And like, they didn't even set it up for that to be possible. And it's just so crazy to me that they change it so much, because this really goes to show this generational trauma, and we do almost see a breaking of it at the end, which I really did enjoy. But honestly, I loved Heathcliff. I know a lot of people are like, dang, this is a bad man, and of course he does horrible things, especially to some innocent people, but I think he's truly getting his lick back. Like, it's crazy to me that people are expected to be systemically oppressed, to be treated horribly on a daily basis, to be just horrible, like horribly treated, and to then treat everybody else, especially the people and their family that treated them horribly, to just treat them with kindness. And I think that it's so crazy, because even in America, we have this idea, right, that like Black people are supposed to forget that slavery happened, just get over it. But like, y'all literally ate us. Like, y'all ate us. And we're just supposed to be, oh, okay, like y'all are real lucky that we want equality or equity and not vengeance or revenge, because I think it's well deserved, and I think his was also well deserved. So I mean, sometimes you can't really fight fire with fire, but I'm also the type of girl where if somebody really did something to you, they deserve to have consequences. And if nobody else is going to give them consequences, if the legal system isn't going to give them consequences, if everything is not going to give them consequences, and you're the one that has to do it to them, then so be it. Then so be it. And that's what I really liked about this one. Also, the setting, oh my God. This was set in the moors in England, which I didn't really know much about, but they're like these big kind of grassy hills that are almost like plains as well. There's not really any trees or anything, but oh my God, it felt so cloudy and rainy and gothic. Like, this is truly gothic story, and I think they did capture that well in the movie as well. But this is such a gothic story that the setting was incredible. The only reason that I feel like this is not a 5-star for me, and why I didn't get that 5-star feeling, is because this is actually told through two other people, kind of. So we are following basically like a servant who was a servant to Kathy specifically most of the time, and her recounting of the story, and she's telling it to this guest of Heathcliff's, and he is writing it down in his journal. So we're basically getting like a secondhand recounting of all these events. And while I do think it is a very full recounting, I don't think our narrators are the most reliable. And also, I feel like that means that we have some distance between us and the characters, because we are not getting like Heathcliff and Kathy's perspective or their inner thoughts and how much they truly love and adore each other. We didn't get that. We just got the recounting of like what they said and their actions and their behaviors. And that's all that we really got. And that's why I do feel like in the movie, I was able to just feel a little bit more connected to the romance, unfortunately, just because, I say unfortunately, because I don't think the movie's a good adaptation, but I feel like I was able to feel it just a little bit more because I was able to see it. You know, I was able to see their connection, versus this is like a cold second recounting of their connection. And so I just wish that maybe this was told in a different way, but I absolutely see why this is a classic. And when this was written in like the 1800s and this was published, what year was it published? Let's see. This was first published in 1847. When this was published in 1847, girl, oh Lord, I know this is around the time of like the Bridgertons, maybe a little bit after, because they're like early 1800s, and I know they would have been clutching their damn pearls. They would have been gagged and gooped, okay? Because they would have been like, huh? And even now today, I'm like, oh, you was bold for writing this, girl. You was real bold. And I give props to Miss Emily Bronte. Sad it's her only novel, but I've heard really good things about her other sisters' works, which I do own in a bind-up as well. I have a huge bind-up, but I really wanted to like annotate this, which I haven't annotated a book in a long time. But I really liked it. In this edition, Heathcliff is on the back, Kathy on the front. Their love story, crazy. The mess afterwards, crazy. This was all so insane, and I highly recommend. I do like the movie, but I highly recommend reading the book, especially read the book before the movie, because so much of what the story is, the heart of this story, the themes of this story are completely dismissed by the movie. Every single important thing that this book says is dismissed in the movie. The movie is a tragic love story, a tragic toxic love story. This one has a tragic toxic love story in it, but it's so much more than that. The themes in this one, I just can't get over how we explore these themes, especially through Heathcliff, but then even through all of them, even through Kathy, she has her own stuff going on and her own things. And like, there's so much to talk about with class and poverty and race and how that all plays into the story. And I just think this was so excellent. And again, for the time period, I know that it was gagged. My last 4-star was my February pick for my After Hours book club, and that is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. I was nervous to pick this one up because I've enjoyed 2 releases from her before, Daisy Darker and Rock, Paper, Scissors. I love those ones. But last year I read her release, Beautiful Ugly, and I hated that book. Okay, I didn't hate it, but I greatly disliked that book. And so I was nervous to go into this one because sometimes I feel like authors, especially thriller authors, I will like their work and then they'll come out with one thriller and that I don't like, and then all the other thrillers after that I just don't tend to like. And I was scared that that would happen with Alice Feeney, but I feel like this one, all the issues that I had with that book were not present in this book at all. I really did enjoy this one. We're following a woman named Eden, and she goes on a run one day, and when she comes back, her key is not working in the lock, and another woman answers the door that looks very similar to her, you know, weirdly so, and is claiming to be Eden. And her husband comes and he's like, who the fuck are you? Like, get off our property. Like, who are you? Whatever. And she is very much confused about where her life is, because she was even like, she's an artist and she's supposed to, you know, have this art showing later that night, and then the other Eden goes and everybody's acting like this is just the regular Eden. So she's so confused on how her life was completely replaced just on this run, and it was very confusing for her. But there is a twist midway through this book, about a third of the way in, had me gagged. There's so much in this, but we're also following another perspective. Actually, I forget her name. Her name is Birdie, and we're following her 6 months earlier, and she's actually a Londoner, and she inherits this estate called Spyglass in this town as well, that all this other stuff is happening, but it's 6 months prior, and she got a diagnosis that is terminal, and she is dealing with that. But when she inherits this Spyglass house, she actually finds a letter to her grandmother, who she inherits it because her grandmother passed away. And in this letter, there is basically this information about, like, if you want to know your death day, come see us, basically type shit for free. And she is like, I'm interested. So she signs up, even though her grandma already basically did it, because the deputy or police, whoever was, we get his perspective as well. Because yeah, we get his perspective as well, one of the police officers, and he went to check on the grandma and found her dead because she sent him a note saying that she was going to die on that day. So she kind of knows based off that her grandma did this and knew, but they end up doing it for her, and she does have a death day, and that's kind of weighing on her. And I was really confused in the beginning how these two stories were going to connect. I was really interested in how Alice Feeney was going to do that, and she did it flawlessly. This is a very tight thriller. I don't really see many plot holes, and I feel like every single piece, every single thread that I was questioning in my head got tied up. Everything got connected so well, and it's one of those things that when you look back, you're like, oh shit, like I see the breadcrumbs, but when she was laying them, you just didn't see them. And I really liked that this one again had kind of twists throughout, because that was one of my issues with Beautiful Ugly, is like 90, 85, maybe 90% of that book was literally nothing, was literally dry. There was no tea, no twist, no drama, no nothing. And I was not gagged. So I was a little bit annoyed at that, because especially at the end, when we started to get the twist, it would like lead up to the twist, and then it would switch perspectives, and then we would start leading up again, and then it would switch, and then we start leading up again, and then it would switch. And I feel like I was being teased and edged, but this one I feel like did it a lot better. I really like where the twist went at the end, and this one I would say that I did enjoy the characters. None of them are likable, they're all morally gray, but I think they're characterized pretty well, and I do feel like even though they're morally gray, like again, I'm rooting for them. The same way that I was rooting for Heathcliff, I was rooting for some of these characters, because they're morally gray, but I think that what they're trying to do is well deserved. And now, do I think that makes them a good person? You know, I don't know about that, but I think that, you know, again, if nobody else is going to get justice for you, sometimes you have to take it into your own hands. And I really did enjoy this one a lot more than her release last year, I will say. Now, I will say the other two books from her, I did enjoy more than this, but this one is still a good one, and it makes me feel better because I think I have 2 other of her books on my shelves, and I was nervous to pick them up after Beautiful Ugly, but now I feel a lot better to pick them up. And I think there's only 2 other works from her that I have not read that I do not own. So I'm about halfway done with her backlist. So maybe I'll catch up, and then I can do a little guide to Alice Feeney for y'all. Lastly, moving on to my 2 favorite books of the past 2 months, which are my 4.5 stars. The first one that I have up, I also read for that TBR takedown vlog, so I don't want to say too much, but that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I really am obsessed with this book. I can't quite pinpoint why it did not get a full 5-star out of me, but I really enjoyed this one. We are basically following this Call family, which are 4 siblings, but one of them is kind of like a cousin sibling, you know. And they are these things called greenbone warriors, which in this world, there are these people called the Kankanese, which are the only people that can utilize jade to basically have magic or these special abilities. And even though the Kankanese do have this capability and the jade does not harm them, they also need to train to be able to use it. So there are these greenbone warriors, which are kind of like these clans that are almost like mafia, gangs, that kind of realm. But they're these clans that kind of run the city, and so these clans kind of have like different parts of these like of this country. So I would say it's almost like the warring clans period, because this is Asian inspired, I think specifically East Asian inspired, but it's taken from like multiple different cultures, not like one specifically. So I really enjoyed that as well, like seeing kind of like an amalgamation of all these cultures coming together. And so they do need to train. So there are these specific families that have kind of like inherited this and passed it down. And there's like a whole like university, but really only people from these families, certain families like within these clans, get into that university to train. And most of the other Kankanese are just living regular lives. But there has been a recent shift in power in the specific Call clan and the Call family. So obviously there are other people who are within the clan, but they're specifically run by this Call family. And so we are following these 4 siblings as they are kind of dealing with this newfound positions that they are in, and how they are dealing with that, because the Mountain Clan and them, they do got beef, bro, and they be tussling. Okay, I was truly gagged. Like at points in this, I was like, they're cooked, like everything is cooked, nothing is gonna work out. Like I was truly like in distress over this, because I was like, there's no way. And I was so attached to these characters. I really truly love every single one of them, and most of them are men. There's only one woman so that's really surprising, but I really did feel so attached to these characters, and I just want the Call family to succeed so bad. And I don't even know if they're going to. Like the end of this doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but I'm still like, we have 2 more books after this, and I fear they're probably going to get more cooked. And I don't know if they're going to be ultimately cooked at the end, or if they're going to, you know, make it through, because this is a trilogy and I've only read the first one. And I love the magic system. I love the world. There was so much depth to it, but I do wish we had a little bit more. I think that was my only real like complaint, was like, I feel like I just wanted a little bit more depth, but like it even brings in like a drug related to this jade power, and like talking about that. It talks so much about like politics. I think this is a very politic heavy book, like talking about the Call family and their rivals with other clans, them related to like the Kankanese people. There's even other groups of people that are like oppressed within this culture, and then them and how they like all kind of relate to these other nations that are fully like human, like they don't have any of these powers at all. And so like all of those politics, like inner politics within the clan, like inter-clan politics, just Kankanese politics, and then Kankanese versus the rest of the world and rest of the nation's politics. So this is a very politic heavy book, but I feel like I got so attached to our characters. And as I was saying, they even bring in like some of the drugs to the world building. They even have like certain things, like they get these itches, and it's not like a spoiler at all, but there's this image stuck in my head where they were describing that someone got the itches, which basically like, it's like people who can't handle the jade that much. And it can even happen like even if you've been a greenbone warrior, you can still get the itches if you just can't control it anymore. I don't know how else to describe it. And this one woman, she literally took a cheese grater to her arms, to her wrists, to try to get the itches out. Okay. And I'm like, that's imprinted in my brain forever. And just like those little details fleshed out this world so much. And I don't know what else to say on this because I talked about so much of this in that vlog that's coming out. So I think that's where I'm going to leave it. But this book was so worth it. I know my friend Quinn is so happy that I finally read this, because this has been on my TBR for so many years. And I'm so glad that I read it. And I'm not even mad that I waited so long, because I don't know if I would have been able to fully appreciate this book and all of its depth and nuance and just excellence if I read this a couple years ago. And my last 4.5 star is this book that I just read for fun called Losing Control. This is an urban romance, the only second urban romance that I read. I read a lot of Black romances, but not like specific urban ones. And this one was so good. Like I truly loved this one. I don't even know how to like say a synopsis for it, because this one is really a character driven story. It's a character driven romance, but we are following 2 different characters. And one of them, the female main character, she has gone through an incredible loss, and she is still grieving that loss. That's so much of this book is grief and loss and getting over that. We're following her a few years after this loss happened, but she is still, you know, grappling with it and trying to make her way through and it was been really hard for her. And then we're also following Caesar, which is not spelled like Caesar salad, it's spelled differently. But Caesar, he is a multi-million-dollar rapper. Like, he's a multi-millionaire. He's a rapper. He, you know, has done so much with his career, which has been really excellent. But he also has a past of his own, specifically with his childhood and trauma. And this is definitely an urban romance. So we do have some stuff going on, a lot of like violence with like gangs, and we even get into like sex work in this and exploitation. And I really enjoyed all these themes. Like, this was such a heavily drenched romance, and I would honestly say like it's almost on par with Kennedy Ryan. It's just that this one is definitely more urban, and Kennedy Ryan's are just kind of more contemporary Black romances. But the way that they handled so many topics with depth, but also had such a strong romance, and even brought in like comedy elements. The side characters in this were so standout as well. Like, our main character, she has a sister, she even has a mom, and we talk about that relationship with her mother and like almost the parentification of children and how they're dealing with that as adults and having those boundaries with family. Like, exploring that was so interesting. And then we even have Caesar's family, who has hella brothers, his mom, and his mom is going through this own stuff. There's almost like it is a blackmail scheme. It's not almost like, it is a blackmail scheme that's also happening in this book that's really weighing on these characters. But then at the heart of it, there is this romance between Caesar and Marley, and I love their romance and how they came together. Truly, like, they really grew and healed separately and together, and I think that's so important to clarify. But I loved seeing them come together, and you know, they both weren't looking for love or any sort of relationship, but they kind of just fell into it. And I think that's how most of life goes, and I really enjoyed the way that this explored just every single theme. The characters were done incredibly, the romance was done incredibly. Like, this was truly such a standout book, and I cannot wait to pick up more from this author and just more urban romances in general, because I do actually really, really love them. I never doubted that I would like them, but I never really tried them before. So I was just interested to see, because, you know, they tend to have like those very urban romance covers, which are not bad. They definitely have their time and place, but you know, I've just seen them growing up. My mom has read some, so I'm happy to finally get into some myself. But those are my reads for the past 2 months. I'm hoping to get back to more regular wrap-ups, like hopefully monthly ones. But if I read less than like 5 books, I'm not doing a wrap-up. And I didn't even do a wrap-up for November and December. But honestly, guys, I think between those 2 months, I read like 9 or 10 books. So it really wasn't anything crazy. I hope that you guys really enjoyed this video, because I miss doing wrap-ups and just talking about the books that I've read recently. I feel like a lot of the books I read the past couple months are gothic. So if you made it to the end, leave the candle emoji down below, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.